So I'm here with Scott Holiday of Rival Sons. Thank you very much for joining me, Scott.
Very happy to be here, man. Good morning, good evening.
Well, early evening over here, morning for you.
That's right.
um,
Yeah.
of course, you've got your second release this year, Lightbringer, coming out on October the 20th. And we'll absolutely be diving into that. But first off, I always like to have a look at how things began for a musician, as I feel that, it shapes who they're going to go on and be. So what first got you into wanting to become a musician, and in particular a guitarist?
Hmm. Gosh, I have to reach way back. I think uh, I witnessed my parents enjoying music so much. I have younger parents, and they were still throwing parties and having fun all the time, and they were very rock and roll, both of them, and into music. And it seemed like there was a recurring theme where everybody just every time they had a party, the music revolved around the music.
Mm.
And aunties and uncles and everything. Anytime anyone had a party, everybody was really into what was being played, and people would sing and dance and enjoy the music like this. And I've had to think about it like this because there's not really musicians in my family,
Mm.
but I think I just recognized that kind of joy being centered around music and just really being indoctrinated and brainwashed with uh, probably hero worship, like watching family members and friends and stuff just be so inundated with these musicians. I think they ended up having some importance. Like, oh, these are important people to them. Like you
Mm.
have families where it's like they're maybe real political families, so you get these people that grow up and they're just like born politicians. They're born people that want to be in government. They're into it. Um, so for us, it was rock and roll people, and I just thought that's cool. There's significance there for my family, and other than that, I was just naturally drawn to it. So
Mm.
I was around it enough that it made me want to get into it, and I don't know why it was the guitar. It was just that's what it was. And by about 10 years old, I had some Spanish guitar that I would beat around on, and then that was it. As soon as I had one, it was this was just innately something I was connected to, which is funny because I'm watching it happen again with my own children. They're starting
Mm.
to play guitar. I have a couple teenagers right now, and they're I'm watching them pick it up, especially my son, who is 16 now, and you can see him in the Rapture video. He's
Ah,
the young man in the video for Rapture.
yeah.
He's he's just raiding my studio and guitars and gadgets and anything he can like come grab, which is not what I had at all. But he's probably spends 5 hours a day on it. He's just inundated, and I don't bother him with it too much. I'm not over there guiding him and here's what you need to learn. Here's what you have to do. I'm letting him do it. Like he'll figure it out what he wants, and you know what he did, and he is. So sometimes it's just in us
Mm.
without getting too far out and transcendental about it. I think we carry things through lives. I'm a believer in you know a soul getting carried through many different births, and I think musicians a lot of times are people that probably great musicians are people that carry it with them. So it's that thing wants to come out again in the next life.
Mm. I think growing up, everybody has that first band they really connect with. Obviously, you were saying there that you listen to quite a lot of different music. Was there a band in particular that was like, this is my band?
Yeah, the way I talk about this is very funny. I combine spiritual life with it. In my spiritual practice, there's a thing called Ishtadev. It's like the primary god of worship. So, like in the Hindu religion,
Mm.
there's like many different deities and forms of God. You've probably heard of like Ganesh and Shiva and Krishna. So in different sects of the religion, they will recognize all of the different incarnations, but they will worship one primarily. They call that the Ishtadev,
Mm.
primary god of worship. So I always make this joke. It probably doesn't make much sense to you or anybody else, but I still use it. My family's Ishtadev of rock and roll, our primary band of worship. Every rock and roll family has one.
Yeah.
Ours was definitely, and this will come of no surprise to you, I'm sure, your listeners, was Led Zeppelin. That was the Ishtadev. There
Mm.
was like many other gods of worship, the Stones, the Beatles, Pink Floyd, big one, and so many more. Rush, there were so many, but those are some very important ones, and a lot of soul music and blues music. But Zeppelin was a big band for our family. That's the
Mm.
one when it came on, the station never got turned, and it generally got turned up.
Yeah, it's the same with my dad. He's always been the Led Zepp guy, and it's like
Yeah.
it's exactly the same thing. So I completely get
And it's
it.
totally eclipsing, right? If your dad's a Zeppelin guy, the Beatles come on and he's like, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it's
this is
like
good.
yeah, it's all right.
It is
Yeah,
good, but
yeah.
there's not a slight aroma of a Jimmy Page prowess in this, so it's just all right. I mean, like I love they're gonna think like I love Ringo. He's fantastic, but that's not the John Bonham that I love. Of course, as a musician, that the Isha Dave thing kind of honestly goes away. It
Mm.
doesn't it doesn't wear, maybe for some people it wears into their future and they also carry on the tradition. Maybe that's how it is for you, or for I know it is that way for people, but as a musician I have like uh torn a hole in it, and I've
Mm.
gone every direction, so many directions.
I
So
think yeah, I think even doing what I do. I mean, I'm primarily do this. I interview bands and speak with people, and it's done a thing where I don't know, maybe I see the human more now. So I see, like, as you said, like people have this tendency to put the artist like up on some kind of god tier.
yeah.
Um, and maybe it's not, you're not quite as open minded. Like now I have a much more eclectic taste. And I would imagine that's the same way for a musician. Like if you're just
Yeah.
exposed to more.
Yeah, yeah. For people like you and I who are going down the rabbit hole a little further,
Mm,
you go so much further down the rabbit hole than maybe our parents did, because they didn't need to go any further. That's was very satisfying for them to just have what they had and what they grew up on and what they loved, and maybe they're still discovering, but it will always be in stone that this is the Ishtadev, and this is this is who they really love in their heart of hearts, and that's comforting and that's there for them. But for us, we've torn down a rabbit hole, and it's like, well, yeah, we do love Zeppelin, and we'll always have love on our heart for them. But like my family, they're not even that into like jazz or anything, and I'm a
mm,
huge jazz person, so there's a whole world that is another solar system. It's not even a planet. It's another solar system of music when you get into jazz. And they never even visited that solar system. So we're going to be different. It's going to be different for us.
it is. Of course, you have this kind of real signature, instantly recognizable sound. Obviously, you're dubbed as the Fuzz Lord. um, has this always been like?
Just in this thing about talking about spirituality with music, and I have to have this silly name with the name Lord on it. It's
Yeah, leading
terrible.
straight on from that. Yeah. Have you always had this kind of vision of where you wanted to go? I mean, obviously, we've mentioned there that you've kind of pulled in multiple influences that I would imagine that you've looked at other genres. Has that kind of formed the sound that you are today?
I would be afraid of any artist, or I don't know if afraid is the word. I would be leery of any artist that says, yes, I knew exactly where I wanted to go from the beginning. Like, okay, dude, you are the cherry on top of pretentious and just ridiculousness. Because it's how could you ever know? It is such an adventure,
Mm,
um, you know, with art and with music and with life. There are doors that we don't even know they exist, let alone know what's behind them. So we're constantly finding new doors to open and then opening them, and then inside that room there's another door. So
mm,
like this, we're constantly learning and discovering. So I had a direction in my heart that I was moving at a young age that I can
mm,
still see today clearly, but it's been altered and influenced, thank God, in so many ways from the moment I started the journey, you know. So I had some direction. If I was being very pinpointed, like with this band, I had a direction when I started to make a band that would eventually become Rival Sons. I had a direction and an idea of
mm,
what the values that I wanted it to hold on to, the ethos and the values. And like I had felt like very directly that this there's still rock and roll, but rock and roll is evolved into something different. Alternative has turned what we call rock and roll into something very, very different, where almost like for a while in the 90s, any kind of real prowess was kind of frowned upon,
mm,
you know? And that's weird. That's always weird in music, like a style which doesn't uh, applaud uh, prowess or like achieving some like technical skill on your instrument. But I get it because I lived through it, and we were all just sick of people like showboating. You lived through the 80s and you're like, if I see one more guy two-hand tap on a guitar like with spandex, it's gonna kill me. And it was fun while it was there, but it just ran its course like all things do. But I thought when I started this band, we had gotten to a point where rock and roll was starting to be very thin on the elements that I liked about it. Rock and
mm,
roll that was still like soul, rhythm and blues based. Like alternative music almost made blues and soul invisible.
mm,
There was still loud guitars. There was still even solos, and there was something rock and roll about it. There was certainly a energy and a attitude that was had a rock and roll energy to it. But the thing that connected rock and roll to me is its birth from blues and soul and country and western. These are like the early genres that kind of glued together to become rock and roll, with personalities and energy.
mm,
And I felt like that with guitars seemed to be like going away. It's like real thin. You can almost not even see it. And I wanted to create music and a band that didn't forget that. It didn't forget that you can like, there can be a guitar solo that isn't roll your eyes. There can be riffs and fun in the rock and roll and power in it. And it's not roll your eyes into the back of your head like, not again, and it could remind people that rock and roll came from the blues and soul music.
mm,
And that was like a light idea of what I wanted to like encompass more with this band. Not limited to, but that was kind of a start direction for me, which was great when I found I'd already been working with Miley, our drummer, and we were on the same idea. I had preached this idea to him, and he was 100% in. And we were working with a different singer at the time, and it wasn't totally locking. But when I had found and come across Jay Buchanan, it made sense. This is a folk singer that's extremely innately soulful. He sounds like a rhythm and blues singer. He
mm,
sounds like a folk blues, like blue-eyed soul singer, like in the way that you never hear it anymore. So I thought that's what's required. I have plenty of riff and concept, and I can write songs. I need that voice. That voice right there, I've been looking for like, I don't know, 8 years or something. I just haven't found anyone that wants to do it because it's just not popular. That's not the way people are singing right now. So I have to find somebody that doesn't give a shit about what's popular, that they are innately a creature. They are innately a soul singer. Like that's just what's in their heart. And that's certainly the truth about Jay.
Mm. Of course, you were saying that you're looking for things that are different from that period of time when you guys first kind of broke through. Going into that, obviously, when you first broke onto the scene, you were using the 99 custom historic Firebird. Obviously, you still do now. At that time, I mean, I know I never saw another guitarist that was using the Firebird. So why that guitar in particular, or was it because nobody else was using it?
Well, I was a real guitar freakazoid before this band, and into gear and into getting my hands on different things and trying the weirdest things. That's something I've been into since I was a kid.
Mm.
And I've always been, it's always trading guitars, and I, didn't grow up rich or anything. So I didn't just like go and buy whatever I saw. I kind of would be able to acquire one guitar and had to have to trade that guitar with anything else I was able to acquire. Have had to be very smart about it, but I was able to do that. And actually, the first real guitar I had, and I've already come clean about it, I was in this jazz band in high school, and they actually had American Fender Stratocasters and Strat and a bass set that matched. And I was in the jazz band, so I got to take this Strat home, and it was the best guitar I had. So I was like using this with my bands. They actually took a photo of me rehearsing with one of my bands with the school's guitar, this sand colored 80s Strat. And we went through like 5 jazz teachers in the couple years in high school. So they just lost track of everything. And one of the teachers got in trouble for embezzlement of funds and all this drama. And I actually graduated school early, so I just decided at some point I had to say my Hail Marys and say I'm going to accept the karma, but I had no other way. I just kept that guitar. That became my first really great guitar. So that guitar eventually got traded, and I've been doing this the whole time. So I'm giving you a lengthy intro to how I acquired this Firebird. Later I made Before the Fire, and by this point I had signed a record deal with Atlantic too in 2000. So at that point I did come into some bread, and I did buy a handful of instruments and gear. So I did have some surplus at that point, but I made Before the Fire with a bunch of different guitars. Dave Cobb, the producer, also had 50 Strats, 50s and 60s Les Pauls, Tellys, Esquires. I have my 335 double neck. It's actually sitting behind me over here. Or not 335. I'm sorry. My ES double neck. So I used a bunch of different instruments. The point is, I was a Strat guy at that point, and I couldn't do all these songs on a Strat. So I had to kind of think what's going to fit between, what's going to sound like all these different guitars. How can I make it work with just an instrument or two? And I also thought the Strat didn't look the way the record sounded. It didn't make sense. And I know that could seem shallow, but it just didn't go together. The aesthetic didn't make sense. It didn't sound or look like the record, even though I use Strats. So I started looking around, combing through the internet and kind of deciding what would be right, and doing research on the Firebird. It made the most sense to how the record sounded, certainly to me. And then I thought the practicality of it being kind of like a Strat Telly sound with those pickups, but also having a little more punch. This makes sense. It might be the perfect instrument. And then I came across that actual guitar. I'm in California. That guitar was across the country in New Jersey. And I just untouched, um, got on the phone with the shop owner, and he told me about the guitar, gave me all the points, told me what he thought about it, and I just sent him a bunch of gear and made a deal with him and got it sent over because I thought that's the guitar. That guitar looks how this record sounds, and that looks how this band's gonna feel to me. And it came, and I opened it, and it looked even better in person. And I grabbed it and thought, holy shit, this is a really big neck, much bigger than my 70s Strat. This is a lot different of an instrument.
Mm.
And I just fell in love with the guitar. And it really changed my trajectory with guitar playing because I'd never had a guitar quite like that. That felt long scale. It's not,
Mm.
but it feels that way because of the way the Firebird is set up with a really big neck. And I ended up playing that guitar a lot different and approaching it differently because it's not easy. Where if I sit with a Strat, it's kind of got an easier thing about it. It's agreeable. I
Mm.
feel like fenders are very agreeable in general. You know, the necks are smaller, they fit in your hand nicely, they're just really easy to wield, and I love them for that. But this Firebird was like a wrestling match. It was like to get inside of it, I really had to move it and like, wow. And I put bigger strings on it on purpose. And I equated that to like, you play differently when the guitar's a little harder to play, you know? And I like
Mm.
that. I like the feel of it that I don't want to move around too quick. I don't want to like, I'm not looking at arpeggios and certainly not looking at tapping or anything ridiculous where I'm just going to speed play on this thing like I have like a Jackson or a Charvel. I want to play slow, and I was equating this to like surfing. So I live at the beach, and I'm like,
Mm.
this guitar turned up really loud through this big amp is like big wave riding. So if you see guys ride big waves, they come down, they bottom turn, and they're holding on for dear life. They're barely hanging on that wave. So any move they make is significant and interesting, as
Mm.
opposed to like a guy on a little wave with a fast board, short board, where they're moving around. They're like floater off the top, just like cutting, slashing all over the wave. A lot of big moves. This is like fast guitar playing. You know, this guitar is very
Mm.
friendly and light, and I'm going to do every single thing you've ever seen in your life on it. And I liked the idea of this big wave riding on guitar. It makes everything a little more significant. Every bend, the tone, the note choice becomes more important, you know?
Mm.
And I feel like when I look at players like Paul Kozoff from Free, or when I look at like Hendrix, even, I feel like those guys were big wave riding. Those big, loud amps, that they were really, the notes were long and big and important, you know? It's like when you hear Hendrix, you get that like, it's like you get these long things that may
Mm.
not make sense or have the power on your bedroom amp. But when you put that through 100-watt Marshall or two of them, it sounds way different. You fast is not what you're trying to do. And I just liked that guitar, that Firebird gave me that feeling of like
Mm.
importance and like slow down and make it count.
No, I agree. I think that's always the thing I find really interesting about guitarists. They well, like the most successful ones, they always have a thing like their angle on what they're gonna do, like that's different, that may be considered, doing it wrong. Like obviously Hendrix had the thing where he puts his thumb over, like that's the famous one. And like everybody, like if you go to a guitar teacher, some will go, "Oh, you're playing it wrong, or you're doing it wrong." But it's like that
Uh,
creates their angle. Then it's like that's unique.
yeah,
And
yeah,
as you mentioned there, with the thicker strings and stuff that shouldn't really be on that guitar, that's what creates that sound, maybe.
sure. Yeah, I'm a fan of what you're saying. Let people develop. Of course, I think most great teachers do, unless you're being
Mm.
classic trained. I think nowadays we're learning that it comes in all shapes and sizes. We've got a history of very interesting players. I like to think immediately of like a guitar player like Jeff Healey. You know who that is?
Yeah.
The blind guitar player who played with the guitar on his lap like
Mm.
this. And you're thinking, how do you accomplish anything like that? I did when I touch the guitar like that, it does not feel right. I
Yeah.
can't do anything like that, but he's accomplishing everything like that.
Mm.
And it's almost hard to differentiate that he's even holding it differently than anybody else. Except for little passages you can hear that they are different. And there's lots of other examples too.
Mm.
But yeah,
Uh,
these they had to invent this. They had to figure it out. They have to experiment.
mm. Um, a few months ago, I spoke with Jay about Dark Fighter, and he described, these two records in particular as the largest artistic undertaking that the band's done, and him personally. How have you found this whole process? I mean, I feel that you guys have been in kind of I don't know what you call it, like a bit of a golden era. You've had like Feral Roots, that was very successful. You've had
Mm.
Dark Fighter, that's come out, that's pretty damn successful as well. Now you've got Lightbringer on the way, that I imagine was recorded around a similar time as Dark Fighter.
Same time. Same time. Yeah, we recorded Dark
Mm.
Fighter and Lightbringer together. Those were actually songs in the same session.
How have you found that kind of that period? Like, did you like when you went into the studio, did you find that you just had more material to create two records, or did you kind of I mean, as we spoke about earlier, though, like, was this intentional? Was this not intent? Was this just a thing that you fell into?
Um, we wrote what was intended to be just one record. You
Mm.
know, so we just had a group of songs. We just spent more time doing it, so it gave us time to write, I guess, a longer story arc as a collection. Um, and that's kind of how it felt. It wasn't intended to be a concept record initially,
Mm.
really. That wasn't the idea. And I think when I say concept record and address it as that, it's still reasonably loose that it is a concept record. This isn't like we wrote, you know, Tommy or, The Wall. It's not like that. But there is a consciousness and a theme
Mm.
that actually kind of happens between the two records. And yeah, it was intended for one album. And when we finished and tried to cut everything away and look at how it moved and put all the songs together in sequencing, it just ended up being too long. Honestly, it was just too long. It was too much material for one record, and it just felt like, gosh, this is a lot. This is a lot to sit through. This is a double feature, and if we make people sit through this one thing, it's like it's like a 3.5 hour movie. It's just too laborious to go through and feel like it's enjoyable to me. I don't like records that are like over an hour in general. Like, I shouldn't say that's really a blunt statement, but I think I find it laboring to listen to one statement for over an hour from an artist. I think in a musical sense, I'm a big fan of records that are 30 something minutes is always really digestible. You can say a lot in that time, and it's easy to like see and take in and understand and be able to process it. When you start getting into like the 50, 60, 70 minute zone, it's like, wow, it's so much music, so many notes, so much has been said, so many melodies. I don't know. I have to go back through it again, probably 30 times to know what I liked or didn't like. most of the time when it's like this huge collection, I'll find that I end up taking it apart. Like, I like these 3 songs and that's it. And the rest of it, I'm discounting it because I can't see how it all goes together. It's just too much. So when we looked at this collection, I went, okay, there's clearly this and there's clearly that. There is a side of this album that is kind of illustrating the struggle. It's illustrating a struggle and kind of pulling you down to be vague on purpose. And there's a side of this record that is an upwelling and kind of recognizing the struggle and pulling you up out of it. To me, those are 2 different records. To me, that is, there's a record going that way and a record going that way. So we divided it up this way, and it was pretty easy to do and pretty easy to see as soon as we looked at it like that.
Of course, the Lightbringer kicks off with that just under 9-minute epic song, Darkfire. Firstly, why is Darkfire the opening track of Lightbringer? Obviously, it wasn't on Darkfire. And secondly, like how did this song come about? I mean, obviously you've got the acoustic intro there, and it just feels like something a little bit different from what you guys have done previously.
Sure. We actually started writing that song. Me and Jay started working on that tune before Feral Roots. And man, I'll tell you, I think we never carry songs through. This is the exception. When we start an album, we are in a completely different place. I'll use different guitars, different equipment. We refocus and do a new thing. Like, this is a new thing that we're going for. This was the song that we started during Feral Roots at the beginning and went, it just never came back during the Feral Roots sessions. Feral Roots was something else. And we just, we talked about it at some point during Feral Roots and went, I don't think that's we have something else here with Feral Roots. This doesn't belong here. So let's just back burner it, but it's special to us. And we knew it was this big piece. So when we started these sessions, it was kind of an anchor. The Darkfighter Lightbringer sessions, that track was a thing that we were like, this belongs now. It's time. This was an answer to that Feral Roots record. This is going to be something that belongs here. And it started out with the early movements that you hear that Jay wrote. Those first, like, real quiet guitar movements. And then the rest of it we wrote together. With a lot of stuff that I had for the song that I could contribute to him. And we put that whole thing together, like I said before, out at a cabin in Tennessee in the woods. So we figured that out. And when we went to record it, we still wanted to leave room for plenty of stuff to happen off the floor. So that middle section is 100% live. That's something that happened while we played and was just part of the energy in the room of recording that song.
Is there a particular reason to why you've had Darkfighter as the opening track for Lightbringer?
I think mainly because it was not part of the pulling down. It was much more a part of the it's a real I think opening to a chapter. And to me, this song is like very hopeful and very has a upward movement to it. Although it is called Darkfighter, but the word Darkfighter too doesn't indicate anything dark. It's actually the opposite. And I think this song just really encompassed the beginning of a resolution or resolve in the previous album. It needed something very big as we're leaving the first record with Dark Side, which is, we would generally not end a record like that. But if you think about it, if they are companions, it's the middle of the record, isn't it? Darkfighter's ending there, the Dark Side, is the middle of the record. So it's really Darkfighter, the song at the beginning of Lightbringer is really the chapter turning. And now that we've gone all the way down, it's time to come all the way back up. And what better way than with this big, huge statement, this 9-minute roundhouse that I feel is very freeing and almost spiritual for us, and like very, very a powerful musical piece for the band.
You've had kind of over the years, kind of many great kind of iconic riffs. Is there a process like that you go through, maybe in the studio or something that you do? I mean, obviously, like, you know, when I hear your guitars come in, it's like instantly it's Rival Sons. You know, it's just instantly
That's
recognizable.
awesome. And you don't exactly know why and how, I think, most of us, but that's really wonderful to hear that that's the effect it has for you. And I love that. The process, I don't know. There is some process to it. I guess I could get probably deeper about it, but it's pretty innocent, just like creation is in general. You know what I mean? When I start writing, I write a very clean, simple way. So a lot of stuff that I write will be an electric guitar, not plugged in, into my audio notes in my phone. That's how I will log a bunch of riffs and ideas and changes and stuff. I don't want any effect, no fuzz, no anything, no acoustic guitar. I just want to hear like a very simple, clean guitar. How does the movement and rhythmic value of it feel? How does this work on its own, as stripped back as it can be? And if things get me excited at that point, then I will progress it and then rework that plugged in with some gadgetry, with some tones and texture, you know? So that's kind of how it works out for me. Other times, while I'm working out some riffs with some said texture and tone, I will, of course, just riff around. And while I'm doing that and plugging things in and hearing things, sometimes you plug certain things in and it almost points to a direction, to a riff, to a sound. And I'm just capturing it all little bit by bit. I like to write that way. Sometimes it comes out in more long form where a section moves into sections and you'll have most of the song, but a lot of times I'll just write bit sections that are affecting to me, and I'll add on to them until it makes sense. Like writing a book, and I'll leave it and I'll come back and I'll hear that part again and I'll go, sure, of course. Well, this is what happens there. After this happens, I hear this happening already, this kind of movement, and I'll just tag it on. And sometimes you have to scrap everything. You get so far down with it and you just go, this doesn't work at all, actually. So, and then you pull the third part that you wrote and said, that's the only part that even is good to me anymore. Let's write from that. You know, that's the main part now. Everything else gone. But it's a process like that. I get pieces from Jay. There's his starts, you know. So if I have a start from Jay that I'm just listening to what needs to be there from his song and trying to, I guess, interpret what my role would be for his song, and that's a different process altogether.
I see a lot of kind of upcoming guitarists and you know, different bands over the years that kind of cite Rival Sons as a major influence, and you as well in particular. Do you have like any kind of advice, maybe, or anything that maybe you've learned over the years that you would put to somebody if they were like, what can I do?
Well, I guess I need to know exactly what they're talking about, like in general, like what can I do in the business, or what can I do on the guitar?
Like sonically, yeah. I mean, like I would say, because a lot of people, they say that you have this ability to, you know, Rival Sons is, it's, you know, it's classic, but it's modernized. It feels like something kind of slightly old school, but also new. Like there's this interesting balance that you guys have.
Sure. I I find that my favorite musicians, um, they have a voice, be it a literal voice, it's a vocalist or um, a jazz musician or a guitar player or a horn player or a keyboard player or whatever. Um, to me, the connecting thread of what I love the most is what I call they're able. I believe in them. That's what I say. I believe what they're saying. Like they're telling the truth. Like their voice is a true voice. It's like really convicted, and to me, having some identifiability, that's a great compliment. That's a thing that's hard to even understand why that happens in players, or if I'm doing it and how and why. But I think there's something to constantly taking in the people you feel are the most honest, truthful voices, and not only learning their passages and learning their notes, but it's observing their truth and approaching your instrument in the most honest way, where you're not afraid to make a mistake or play the wrong note, or you really want to be eventually careful that you're not in the state of imitation. You want to be in a state of speaking your truth and telling your story. And that doesn't mean, like, you could hear that and say, well, so you're saying just don't play anything that anybody plays? No. I think you play it all. I think you play something from everyone all at once, and you hear all your influences all at once. And eventually, as a player, that sound of all your influences starts to meld into something that is its own truly original thing, where you're like, I don't, and eventually, for me, in a lot of cases, I'll think, they'll say, oh, this riff reminds me of this, or this solo reminds me of this music reminds me of this. Is this what you were thinking? Actually, I wasn't thinking about it at all. Especially like on these records, I think about influences and stuff, and it's not that they're not there, and it's not that I still don't have influences, obviously, but while I'm being creative, I'm not really pinpointing those influences. I'm not really trying to indicate them too much. I feel like I'm doing music. I'm moving. I'm moving shapes and chords and texture and color in the music in a way that feels pleasing to me, that I feel like this is like says something that I want to say. It's emotionally something that I'm connected to. And if I catch myself doing something that feels very directly reminds me of something or somebody too quick, I want to bend it and shape it in a way that it isn't that. And it can't be mistaken for that. So I'm telling younger players or anybody that would ask, I guess, and really advice is funny that way. And in the end, our truth is going to be different. The way we get there is going to be different, everybody. But if I'm just saying something for the show and I'm saying something for you or just somebody that would ask, that's what I would say. Recognize the players that you feel are telling the truth, that you admire, inundate yourself with them, learn as much as you can from them technically, play it all, mix and match in the weirdest way. Make the strangest musical smoothies that you could possibly think of. Don't be limited to your own instrument. Don't think I'm a guitar player, I need to listen to guitar players. Listen to them all, but don't be limited to it. Hear Clyde Stubblefield and say, something about that drum beat inspires me as a guitar player. Hear old drummers like that. Hear Lionel Hampton. Hear Miles Davis. Hear Thelonious Monk. Hear 80s synth pop, and pick out what really connects to your heart and learn those lines, feel those lines, learn those rhythms, and mash them up take an ELO and mash it into a Devo and mash that into a Freddie Hubbard and smash that together and see what that makes. And I bet you anything it's going to make something more original than you've ever done. And when you start mashing these things together consciously, you'll start to do that unconsciously, and think of textures like that too and color like that too. Like it doesn't have to be the fuzz face with the univibe with the Octavia through a Marshall with a Strat, because we know what you're going to play when you plug all that in. You're going to play Hendrix riffs, and we know what's going to happen when you plug in the Les Paul with the Marshall, with an Echoplex, with a Phase 90 and a wah. We know you're going to hit the page licks. Like, the recipe. So change the recipe. Change the recipe up. Plug different things into different things. What's important in this time, besides telling the truth and being honest with your voice, is changing the recipe, turning it on its head and doing something interesting. Create real inspiration and something as new as you can. And even if somebody else says, that sounds just like this to me, that's okay. Don't be concerned. It's your journey that you're creating something new. Everyone's not going to hear that you're the most original, inspiring thing on earth, but you have to do that for yourself. And you will always probably, if you're doing it, that genuinely find an audience that will hear it.
No, I think that's great advice, man. I mean, change the recipe. I think that's the big thing.
Yeah.
A question I always like to finish on, I ask every guest. It's a bit of a hypothetical one. If you could tour with one band from the past and one band from the present, who would they be?
I mean, there's so many correct answers here. There's so many things to say. I think, there's the most obvious ones pop into my head, and it's so corny to say them, but it is the truth. I can't help but what so many guitar players are going to say is, because of the folklore surrounding this player, it's hard to not want to witness a tour with Hendrix. Because there's so much folklore around it. When I think of old players, I think it would be cool to see that early on. And I also think of like the highest point of like Zeppelin. Just so cliche, but it's still just a thing. Like, there's a reason it's the folklore surrounds it, and I think we've watched a million videos. I think we know what's going to happen, but just to be present and feel the energy and watch the audiences and like see how that felt. Those acts are high on my list. Those two would be like, wow, a whole tour, not just a night. So I could see their off nights and I could see their on nights. Yeah, I'd be interested to see that. I'd be especially the megalomania that surrounded both of those bands, just the crazy fanatical nature of it, Present day, well, I've done some a whole handful of touring with I did a summer with my friends in the Queens of Stone Age. That was really great. I'd love to do some more shows with those fellas. I played with so many of the heroes that are still around. It's hard to say. I mean, selfishly, there's acts like I'd love to tour with like Radiohead. I don't think our band would be the crowd might not respond to our band when you go to see Radiohead, but like I would like to do a run with them. We just came off with Smashing Pumpkins. Honestly, that was kind of a big one for me. Those guys were really.
Some people would think, oh, that may be a bit of a left field choice there, going with Smashing.
Sure. Not left field for me as a guitar
Mm,
player at all. And growing up, that was a group that was really really important. I'd love to tour with Pearl Jam. We've never
mm,
even played with those guys. They were a huge influence on me as a kid, and I think they're still just a incredible band. But uh, honestly, I don't know if there is current like dream tours for me, and that sounds kind of boring. But
yeah.
it's not like that. And the old shows I think are just like um they're just like you want to like really you want to peer behind the curtain. That's all,
Yeah.
right? But there's
I
no
think,
wrong answers. I mean, touring with Zappa, come on, who
yeah.
doesn't want to see a great Zappa tour? That would be incredible. Selfishly, I'm thinking I don't even know if they toured like Bitches Brew, but going on like a tour with like a jazz ensemble like that would
Mm,
be like so incredible, so like insane. Mid 70s, early 70s Who
mm.
tour would be pretty incredible and fun. And there's just a lot of them that would be really great.
No, no, I agree. I think it's such a difficult one. Everybody always leans back and goes, "Oh my god," because there's just so many things. I mean, people will probably say about 40 minutes later they think of something afterwards. But
I mean, I
um,
could go way deeper and get way crazy. I'm sure you can feel that. But I'm just going to say
yeah,
the ones that pop into my head are I would like to see like Zepp in 74.
mm,
Yes, I would really like to see that. I'd really love to see Hendrix in maybe like 69, 70, that kind of zone. But it might even be more fun to see him earlier, like right
mm,
when it before Band of Gypsies, even when it was the experience, like that craziness when he was the dandy, and it was like, whoa, let's see that tour. That was pretty
mm,
far out. They kind of shocked everyone. I think about also like a good early Dylan tour. Like, come
mm,
on, that would be, I mean, it was just shocking the world so hard.
mm.
Stone 72. We all know that tour. Let's go.
No, no, I agree. It feels endless. I mean, Jay,
Even
interesting.
better, the early soul reviews where everybody would just come to one song. Like, let's go on the tour where they all rode on the bus together, and you're getting like 7 acts in a night or 5 acts in a night, of the
Yeah.
most influential soul, like a soul review every night. I'll take that.
That sounds an interesting one. Jay went with quite an interesting choice. He went with rival sons of the past of like 2015 to tour with them, and he went with I think rival sons of today, because he
That is
felt
such
that.
a J answer.
Well, he felt that. I think it is true. He felt that you guys had evolved that much over the years. That it would be
And
interesting to
I'm
kind of see
sure
that.
some of your list that's a very roll your eyes into the back of your head for many listeners. Um, I'm not going to come to his rescue on this, but he's a very good heart and he's a very good soul. Don't be mad at Jay. It's not out of egotism.
No.
He's just very genuine in his answer, and there's good
It
intent
was
behind it.
it made for an amazing highlight reel because we've had people over the years say Rival Sons as the band that they would love to tour with. And then it gets to Jay and he selects Rival Sons. So we've got this amazing line of
If he's good for nothing else, it's it's the reels.
Thank you very much for joining me, Scott. And for those that want to check out Lightbringer, that comes out October the 20th. The link is in the description for that to pre-order. And of course, you'll be over in the UK and on the 13th of October. It's a Friday as well, Friday 13th. So that's
Starting
always
the tour on Friday the 13th
yeah,
at the Roundhouse.
yeah.
Let's go, right?
So yes, for people that are feeling brave, you can go and grab your tickets for that. Then, thank you very much, Scott. I really appreciate it, man.